The palace's walls shook with the deep rumbling roar of alien war machines outside. Every window trembled. Dust fell from the ancient ceiling. Kyle knew this was the final stand. He turned to Princess Arya, who stood by the window, her silver hair glowing in the dim light. She was unarmored again, this time not out of surprise, but because she had chosen it. She wanted her people to see her as she truly was, their leader, their hope. "You still have time to escape," Kyle said, his voice low but urgent. Arya shook her head. "And leave my people to die? Never. If the people see me flee, they will lose all hope." Kale stepped closer, his boots crunching over broken glass. "If you die, they lose more than hope. They lose the reason to fight. I can protect you, but I can't bring you back from death." She smiled softly, the kind of smile that only appeared when she spoke to him. "You already brought me back once, Kale. The moment you stepped into that cell weeks ago, I started living again." Kale's jaw tightened. There wasn't time for emotion, not now, but her words sank into his chest like fire. Outside, the first explosions hit the palace gates. The sound was deafening. Shouts echoed down the halls, soldiers yelling orders, civilians screaming as they were rushed toward evacuation routes. General Loran, a tall alien with burned scars on his cheek, burst into the room. "Human! The enemy has breached the outer wall!" He glanced at Arya. "Princess, we must move you now!" Arya stood firm. "No, I will face them." Loran's eyes narrowed. "Then I will die beside you." Kale stepped forward, placing himself between both of them. "No one's dying today. We have a plan." Loran raised a brow. "A plan? In this chaos?" Kale smirked slightly. "Chaos is where humans do their best work." They moved quickly, Kale leading the way, Arya and Loran close behind. The corridors were choked with smoke from fires deeper in the palace. The air was thick and hot, the smell of burning metal mixing with the sharp tang of ozone from energy weapons. At a corner, Kyle stopped, signaling them to halt. Enemy soldiers, black, armored, insect-like aliens, were swarming toward the royal chamber. Their mandibles clicked, their weapons glowing. Kale looked at Arya. "Do you trust me?" Her answer was immediate. "Always." Kale darted forward before Loran could protest. He fired his rifle, hitting the first two enemies in quick bursts. Then he dove behind a fallen pillar, drawing their fire away from Arya and Loran. "Go!" Kale shouted. "Get to the command room." Loran grabbed Arya's arm. "We can't leave him." But Arya's eyes stayed locked on Kyle. He fought like a storm, fast, unpredictable, relentless. It was the same determination she'd seen from the first moment they met. Minutes later, Kyle rejoined them in the command room. His armor was scorched, his rifle nearly out of ammo. "They're pushing hard," Kyle said, breathing heavily. "But I think we can make them break." Arya frowned. "How?" Kale pointed at the tactical map. "They want the palace because they think it's the heart of your power. We make them believe it's a trap. Loran, take every remaining soldier and set up explosives along the eastern hallways. We'll lure them in, then seal them inside." Loran's eyes widened. "That's suicide for whoever's bait." Kyle looked at Arya. "That's me." Arya's voice was sharp. "No, absolutely not. I will not watch you throw your life away." Kyle met her gaze. "You won't have to. I'm not dying today." The plan moved fast. Loran and the soldiers planted the charges, while Kyle and Arya stayed near the main entrance to draw the enemy in. The thundering steps of the invaders grew louder with every passing second. When they appeared, dozens of them, black armor gleaming, Kale stepped forward, rifle raised. "Come on, you ugly bastards!" Blaster fire lit the air. Kyle moved like lightning, drawing their attention. He made sure they kept advancing, pushing deeper into the trapped hallway. "Now!" Laurent's voice roared over comms. The walls erupted in fire and dust. The explosion shook the entire palace. The enemy forces were cut off, trapped, or destroyed. The few survivors fled back the way they came, retreating into the city. The sudden silence felt unreal. Kyle lowered his rifle, chest heaving. Laurent emerged from the smoke, grinning. It worked. By the stars, it actually worked. But Kale wasn't looking at Laurent. He was looking at Arya. She was standing in the center of the ruined hall, unarmored, covered in dust and ash, yet holding herself like a queen. Her eyes met his, and for a moment, the chaos around them didn't exist. "You saved my people," she said quietly. Kale shook his head. "We saved them." Days later, the war ended. The enemy withdrew completely, their fleets vanishing into deep space. The palace was damaged, but it still stood. So did the people. On the final night before Kyle's return to his own world, Arya called him to the highest tower. The view stretched, over the city, lit by soft golden lights. "You could stay," she said. Her voice was almost hesitant. Kyle smiled faintly. "And live as what? A human in an alien court?" "You'd live as the one I trust most," she said. "The one who came when I was unarmored, and stayed." Kyle looked out over the city. "I can't promise I'll stay forever, but I can promise I'll always come when you need me." Arya stepped closer, the wind catching her silver hair. "Then I will always call for you, Kale." And for the first time since the war began, both of them felt at peace. The palace was alive with motion. Bright banners hung from the spires, and the twin suns cast warm gold across the open courtyards. Today was the day of the peace summit, the first time in years that representatives from all the border systems would gather in the Tharini capital. Ethan stood outside the princess's chamber, already dressed in the formal armor Lyra had given him. It wasn't heavy like Tharani metal. It was lighter, built for a human frame, but patterned in silver swirls so that he matched her honor guard in appearance. He adjusted the shoulder plates, feeling a little ridiculous but strangely proud. The door opened, and Lyra stepped out. Her armor was perfect, polished to a mirror shine, the plates engraved with deep curling symbols that glimmered in the light. The helmet rested under her arm, revealing her braided silver hair and steady violet eyes. "You wear the armor well," she said. Ethan gave a small smile. "It's a good fit, but I'm guessing this is more for show than for battle." Her expression didn't change. "In our court, appearances are battle." They moved together through the halls toward the summit chamber. Guards and servants bowed as they passed, though Ethan could feel the sideways glances. Some still whispered. He could tell from the shifting gazes and the faint tension in the air. The summit hall itself was enormous. A wide circular platform sat at its center, surrounded by tiered seating for the delegates. Banners from different worlds hung in arcs overhead. Floating drones recorded every moment for the audience beyond the palace walls. Lyra walked to the center with Ethan at her side. General Koresh was already there, standing near the other Thyrini counselors. His crimson armor caught the sunlight pouring through the high windows. As the gathering began, the air filled with polite speeches, exchanges of gifts, and ceremonial oaths. Ethan stood silently, watching the crowd. His training told him to scan faces, note exits, and stay alert. And it was that habit that made him notice a small movement in the shadows of the upper balconies. Two figures slipped into position above the main floor. They moved like they belonged, but their hands stayed close to their belts, where weapons could be hidden. Ethan's jaw tightened. He leaned slightly toward Lyra. "We've got company." She didn't look up, but her voice was low. "Where?" "Upper, balcony west side. They're watching you." Her gaze remained fixed on the current speaker. "Do nothing yet. The summit is being recorded. If we act without proof, we give our enemies what they want." Halfway through the event, a ceremonial exchange began. As part of the tradition, each royal was to display their armor in a symbolic moment of openness, removing one piece to show trust. Lyra stepped forward when her turn came. With a graceful movement, she removed the plated shoulder guard on her left side, placing it on a pedestal before her. The crowd murmured softly. It was rare for a Thyrene royal to do this without hesitation. But as she did, Ethan caught sight of something. A faint shimmer on the armor's straps, like thin powder spread along the edges. His instincts flared. Sabotage. A second later, the strap on her remaining shoulder guard gave a sudden snap. The piece slid loose, clattering to the floor. Gasps filled the chamber. Ethan moved instantly. He stepped forward, placing himself between Lyra and the gathering eyes. His voice carried, steady and sharp. "Where I come from," he said loudly, "strength is not in what you wear. It's in what you do. Princess Lyra stands here for peace, not for display. If any in this room think that removing a piece of metal makes her weaker, they know nothing of honor." The hall went quiet. The drones hovered closer, recording every word. Lyra turned her head slightly toward him, her expression unreadable, but there was a faint spark in her eyes. Koresh stepped forward from the edge of the circle, his tone falsely calm. Human words are bold, but boldness does not replace tradition. Ethan didn't back down. Tradition means nothing if it's used to humiliate a leader instead of respect them. Some of the delegates murmured approval, others frowned. But the focus had shifted. Instead of whispers about Lyra's missing armor, the attention was now on Ethan's defiance. The moment seemed to pass, but Ethan's instincts still screamed danger. The balcony figures had moved, one now crouched, pulling something from their belt. The metallic glint told him everything, a concealed blade. "Down!" Ethan shouted. The assassin leaped from the balcony, dropping straight toward Lyra. Ethan lunged, shoving her back as the attacker's blade sliced the air where she'd been standing. The assassin hit the platform hard, but rolled quickly, coming to his feet with inhuman speed. Guards shouted and moved, but a second figure from the balcony slid down a support beam, blocking their path. Lyra stepped forward, pulling a short ceremonial, sword from her hip, a weapon meant for show, but still sharp enough to kill. "Stay back," she said to Ethan. "Not a chance," he replied. The assassin lunged again, this time at both of them. Ethan blocked the first strike with his forearm guard, pain jolting up his arm. Lyra slashed, forcing the attacker to twist. Away. The second assassin closed in, twin blades flashing. The platform became chaos, delegates pulling back, guards trying to push through the confusion, drones whirring overhead to capture every moment. Ethan fought hard, his human reflexes quick, but the Thyrene attackers were faster. One blade caught his side, slicing the armor but not cutting deep. He gritted his teeth and countered with a heavy punch to the attacker's ribs. Lyra's movements were precise, her strikes efficient. She didn't waste motion, and for the first time Ethan saw her fight without the full weight of ceremonial armor slowing her down. She was fast, faster than he'd imagined. Finally, with a joint effort, they drove the attackers back toward the edge of the platform. One assassin leaped for the balcony, trying to escape, but a well-aimed throw from Lyra's sword caught his leg, sending him crashing down. Guards swarmed in, pinning both to the ground. The crowd roared, some in shock, some in approval. Koresh stepped forward, his tone cold. "You have allowed violence into the sacred chamber, Princess. This will stain our name." Ethan turned on him. "She didn't allow it. Someone planned it. And maybe you should ask how they got in so easily." The words hung in the air. Karash's eyes narrowed, but he didn't answer. Lyra stood tall, her remaining armor dented and scratched, the ceremonial sword gone but her presence unshaken. "Let the record show," she said, her voice carrying across the hall, "that even unarmored, a Thyrene royal does not fall, and let it also show that today a human stood beside me in that truth." The delegates murmured again, louder, this time, but now the tone had shifted. What had begun as an attempt to shame her had become a display of defiance and unity. As they left the hall, the suns now low in the sky, Ethan walked beside her in silence for a few moments. His side ached, and he could still feel the adrenaline humming through his veins. Finally, Lyra spoke. "You stood before the entire summit and told them honor is not in armor. You know that will be repeated for days, maybe years." "Good," Ethan said. They needed to hear it. Her lips curved faintly, the closest thing he'd seen to a real smile. "Perhaps they did, and perhaps I needed to see it proven." They walked on, but Ethan couldn't shake the thought that this wasn't over. Whoever had sent those assassins wasn't finished. The summit might be saved, but something far more dangerous was moving behind the scenes, and he knew one thing for certain. The next time they came, he wouldn't let her fight alone. The next morning, Ethan was woken early by the sound of sharp knocks on his chamber door. He sat up instantly. Years of soldier training meant he was alert before his eyes were fully open. When he opened the door, 2 palace guards stood outside, their armor glinting in the pale morning light. One spoke in a clipped tone. "The princess requests your presence in the West Training Hall. Now." Ethan quickly pulled on his uniform jacket and boots, wondering what kind of meeting started this early. The West Training Hall was unlike anything he'd seen before. It was a massive open space, the walls lined with weapon racks and glowing blue torches. The floor was smooth, made of some kind of black stone that reflected faint shapes like water. There were no windows, only high skylights that let in sharp beams of sunlight. In the center stood Princess Lyra, fully armored from the neck down, silver plates, shoulder guards, and gauntlets, each etched with swirling patterns. But her helmet was resting under her arm, leaving her face clear. She didn't smile when she saw him. "You're late." Ethan glanced at the sunbeam on the floor. "It's not even breakfast." "Training waits for no one," she said simply. "Training?" Ethan asked. "You are under my protection," Lyra said. "That means you are tied to my honor. If you fall behind in skill, it reflects poorly on me. If the council tries to challenge my decision to keep you here, I will point to your ability as proof you are worthy of staying." Ethan crossed his arms. "So you're saying this is a test?" "Exactly," she said, tossing him a wooden practice staff. "Show me if you can fight without hiding behind human weapons." The first clash came fast. Lyra moved with fluid speed, her staff a blur. Ethan barely blocked the first strike, the impact rattling his arms. She pressed forward, her attack smooth and precise, forcing him to step back. "You're holding back," she said. "I'm trying not to hit a princess," Ethan replied, parrying another blow. "Then you will lose," she countered, spinning. And striking low, Ethan adjusted his stance, blocking and pushing back harder. Years of close-quarters combat training kicked in. He stepped into her attack, using his shoulder to shove her off balance for just a second, enough to swing his staff toward her side. She blocked at the last moment, their staffs locking together with a loud crack. Her violet eyes met his, and for the first time, there was the faintest glint of approval. "Better," she said. The training went on for an hour. By the end, Ethan's arms ached, his shirt clung to him with sweat, and his breathing was heavy. Lyra, while clearly exerted, seemed far less tired. Her endurance was incredible. She tossed her staff aside. "Not bad for someone who relies on projectile weapons." "I could say the same for someone who wears 20 pounds of metal," Ethan said between breaths, her lips curved slightly. "This armor is part of me. When I fight, it fights with me." Before Ethan could reply, the heavy doors to the hall opened. A palace servant stepped inside and bowed low. "Princess, the preparations for the summit have begun. The council requests your presence to confirm the final seating arrangements." Lyra's jaw tightened slightly. "Of course. Tell them I will come shortly." The servant hesitated. "There is another matter. Word has spread that certain factions may attempt to embarrass you during the summit." Ethan straightened. "How?" The servant's eyes flicked toward him, then back to Lyra. "I only overheard pieces. Something about ensuring you are seen unarmored before the delegates." Lyra's expression darkened. "Leave us," she ordered. The servant bowed and left. Quickly, Ethan stepped closer. "Sounds like what happened when I first saw you wasn't just bad luck." "I suspected as much," Lyra said. "Now it seems they plan to repeat it, in front of the most important gathering of leaders in the sector." "Who are they?" Ethan asked. "Enemies within the court. Those who believe peace is weakness," Lyra said, her tone sharp. "If they can make me appear vulnerable before the summit, they can push for more aggressive policies, even war." Ethan's jaw set. "Then we stop them." Lyra looked at him for a long moment. "This summit is not a battlefield in the human sense. Here, weapons are words, and the armor is reputation. You must learn both if you are to stand beside me there." The next 3 days became a blur of intense training. In the mornings, Ethan sparred with Lyra in the West Hall, learning the rhythm and flow of Thireni melee combat. In the afternoons, she drilled him in etiquette. How to bow properly to foreign dignitaries, how to read the subtle gestures in Thireni body language, and how to stand silently without looking either timid or aggressive. "Every glance matters," she said during one lesson. "If you look at the wrong person at the wrong moment, it can be seen as a challenge or an insult." By the 3rd day, Ethan was moving more like a palace guard than a soldier, though he still struggled with some of the more delicate customs. On the 4th day, Lyra invited him to join her on a walk through the outer gardens. It was a rare moment of calm. Sunlight filtering through alien trees, their leaves shifting between silver and green as the breeze passed. "This place doesn't feel like a palace garden," Ethan remarked. "It isn't," Lyra said. "This is a training ground for the mind. Here I walk to think before battle or before council sessions. The stillness helps me see clearly." Ethan nodded slowly. "And right now, what do you see?" Her eyes narrowed slightly. "I see a storm coming." That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. The moonlight spilled across his chamber, and the silence was almost too perfect, the kind of silence that meant something was wrong. He slipped out of bed and moved to the door, opening it just enough to peer into the hallway. A shadow moved at the far end, quick and deliberate. Ethan followed quietly, keeping to the edges of the corridor. The shadow turned down a stairwell and into a lower passage he hadn't seen before. The air here was cooler, the walls lined with storage crates and maintenance equipment. Voices reached his ears. He pressed himself against the wall, listening. "At the summit," a low voice said. "Her armor will fail when she stands to speak. And when she is exposed, the council will see she is unworthy." The palace drums grew quieter as the walls seemed to swallow the sound. Ethan stood still, his hands loosely at his sides, watching Princess Lyra study him like a puzzle piece that didn't quite fit. "You said you were with the envoy group," she began, her voice calm, but still carrying an edge. "Yet you wandered away into the private chambers of the royal house. This is not a small mistake." "I didn't wander," Ethan replied. "One of your staff waved me over. I thought I was being sent with a message." Lyra tilted her head slightly. "Describe this staff member," Ethan thought back. "Tall, robed like the others. Didn't speak much, just told me this way and kept walking fast. I didn't get a good look at their face." Her expression hardened. "Interesting. No servant would bring you here without purpose. This chamber is meant only for me, my attendants, and the royal armorers. That's a small list, Ethan said. A list where every name is trusted, Lyra answered. She turned away, walking toward a rack of armor. The silver breastplate gleamed in the warm light as she ran a finger over the curved metal. Do you know why I was unarmored, human? Ethan shook his head. I can guess it's not a fashion choice. A faint sound escaped her. Not quite a laugh, but close. I had just returned from a trial. It is a challenge all Therini royals must face before claiming full authority. We fight in the training arenas with real weapons, not ceremony. My armor was damaged during the trial, and I was preparing to repair it myself. You repair it. Yourself? Ethan asked, a little surprised. Don't you have people for that? I do, Lyra said, but a true warrior knows every part of their own protection. If you cannot fix your armor, you are unworthy of wearing it. He nodded slowly. Makes sense. In human history, some soldiers would even make their own. Weapons. Her eyes glanced toward him again, thoughtful. Strange. I expected you to be embarrassed. Most who see me unarmored would look away as if I were suddenly less than what I am. Ethan shrugged. I told you, armor's just the shell. What matters is the person wearing it, and, for what it's worth, you seem capable enough without it. Her expression shifted, just slightly, as if she was not used to such plain words. Before she could answer, the door opened again. This time it wasn't guards, but a tall Therini male in deep crimson armor. His voice was deep, hard. Princess Lyra, there are rumors. Lyra's shoulders stiffened. What rumors? That a human saw you without your armor, the man said bluntly, his gaze turning toward Ethan with open disapproval. The court whispers that your honor is in question. They say you have been careless. Ethan could feel the weight of the man's stare, but he stayed silent. I decide what is careless, Lyra replied, her tone like a blade. And I decide who enters my chambers. The man stepped closer. Then you will also decide how to repair your reputation, starting by removing this human from the palace before more talk spreads. No, Lyra said instantly. The man's eyes narrowed. No? This human stays under my watch, Lyra said firmly. He is my guest, and I will handle the matter. The man looked between them, disbelief clear in his face. But after a tense pause, he gave a sharp bow and left, his heavy boots echoing down the hall. When the door closed, Ethan let out a slow breath. I take it he's not a fan of mine. That was General Koresh, Lyra said. One of the most influential voices in our military council. If he believes you should be gone, then soon others will agree. Then why keep me here? Ethan asked. She studied him for a long moment. Because I want to understand why you were sent to me, whether by accident or by someone's design. And she hesitated as if weighing her words. Because I want to see if your talk about honor without armor is truth or just human charm. Ethan gave a half smile. Guess you'll find out. They left the chamber together. Lyra now wearing a light silver breastplate and arm guards, her robe replaced with ceremonial cloth beneath the armor. She walked quickly, not looking at him, but making sure he kept pace. They moved through quieter corridors until they reached a small garden terrace. Here the air was cooler, carrying the scent of strange flowers with black petals and glowing blue centers. A thin stream of water ran between the plants, catching the sunlight in shimmering lines. This is the inner court, Lyra said. Few are allowed here. I bring you because I have questions. Ethan leaned against the stone railing. Go ahead. Humans, she began. Do you fight for power or for honor? He considered. Depends on the human. Some fight for power, some for honor, some for survival. But the best kind fight for the people they protect. Her gaze sharpened. And you? Which kind are you? I fight for the ones who stand beside me, he said without hesitation. For a moment, the only sound was the soft trickle of water. Then Lyra nodded slowly. Perhaps that is why you did not look away. You do not fear seeing someone without their shell. Or maybe I'm just bad at following alien customs, Ethan said, a touch of humor in his voice. Her lips curved slightly. Again, closer to a smile this time. But it faded quickly. We may not have time for humor. The whispers in the court will grow louder. Some will demand a public trial to prove my honor is untouched. They may even suggest your removal by force. Ethan's eyes narrowed. And if they try? Then, Lyra said calmly, you will see why a Thyrene royal wears armor. That evening, Lyra invited him to a small dining hall instead of the grand banquet. The table was set with dishes that shimmered faintly in the light, some kind of thin seafood, sweet-smelling bread, and crystal cups of pale liquid. They spoke more during the meal. Lyra told him of Thyrene traditions, of the ancient duels that shaped their laws, and the belief that one's armor was the reflection of one's soul. Ethan, in turn, told her of human soldiers who carried no armor at all but still stood their ground. She listened closely, her eyes never leaving his face. Perhaps your people measure strength differently, she said. Maybe, Ethan replied. But in the end, it's all the same. Who you trust to have your back when the fight starts. Before either could speak further, the door opened and another servant entered, bowing low. Princess, General Koresh requests your presence in the council chamber. He says it is urgent. Lyra's eyes narrowed slightly. Very well. Tell him I am coming. The servant hesitated. He also said the human is not welcome. Lyra stood. Then he will be disappointed. She turned to Ethan. Come with me. If this is about you, I would rather you hear it with your own ears. The council chamber was a long, high room with walls of polished black stone. 12 Thyrene stood in a circle, their armor reflecting the torchlight. Koresh stood at the far end, his crimson plates gleaming. This is an internal matter, Koresh said coldly as they entered. The human should not... He stays, Lyra interrupted. Koresh's jaw tightened. Very well, then let us speak plainly. Rumors spread that Princess Lyra was seen unarmored by an off-world soldier. Some call it dishonor. Others call it scandal, one counselor spoke up. We must act. If the other empires hear of this, they will question our strength. They will see weakness in our leadership. Lyra's voice was calm but firm. There was no dishonor. I was completing my trial and my armor was being repaired. The human was brought to my chamber by unknown means. That is the truth. Then prove it, Koresh challenged. Have him removed from the palace and the matter will end. No, Lyra said again, until I know why he was brought to me. He stays. The room murmured with discontent, but Lyra stood unmoving, her violet eyes fixed on the general. Ethan felt the weight of the moment. This wasn't just about him. It was about her authority, her reputation, and something else he couldn't yet name. Koresh's gaze shifted to Ethan. Then understand this, human. You are a guest here only because she allows it. One wrong step, and you will not leave these walls. Ethan met his stare evenly. Understood. As they left the chamber, Lyra spoke quietly. They will watch you now. Be careful where you walk and who you speak to. Ethan nodded. And if I find the person who sent me to your room, her eyes glimmered, then you and I will have our first battle together. The shuttle touched down on the landing pad with a soft metallic thud. Ethan Cole felt the vibration through his boots as the engines cooled. The air smelled faintly of metal and strange spices drifting from the palace beyond. This was supposed to be a simple assignment. Escort a group of human envoys to the royal palace of the Thyrene Empire, stand quietly and leave without causing trouble. Easy, boring, Safe. That's what the briefing had promised. But as Ethan stepped out of the shuttle, the sheer size of the palace made him pause. The walls shimmered in silver-blue tones, their surface rippling as if they were made of liquid light. Spires reached high into the sky, reflecting the orange glow of Tharini's twin suns. Alien banners swayed in the warm breeze, each marked with curling symbols he couldn't read. A squad of Thyrini guards waited for them. They stood tall, almost a head taller than Ethan, and every one of them wore ornate armor. Each plate was etched with patterns that seemed to shift when he looked directly at them. Helmets hid their faces entirely, making them look like walking statues. Humans had met the Thyrini only a few years ago. Since then, contact was polite but cold. They were a proud race, obsessed with honor and appearances. Even low-ranking guards wore armor at all times. Showing oneself without it was, well, the diplomatic briefings had been clear. It was not done. The envoys moved ahead, led by a palace attendant. Ethan stayed near the back, scanning the crowd out of habit. The wide halls of the palace swallowed their footsteps, the walls glowing softly with a blue light that seemed to come from nowhere. At one point, the group paused as their escort consulted with another guard. Ethan, thinking they'd be standing, still for a while, stepped a little away to look at a massive window. Through it, he could see the inner gardens, floating islands of flowers suspended in air, connected by thin bridges of glass. The sight was mesmerizing. He didn't hear the footsteps behind him. "Human this way," a voice called. Ethan turned and saw a palace servant beckoning from a side passage. "I'm not," he began, but the servant had already disappeared, down the corridor. Thinking maybe there was some urgent message, Ethan followed. The passage was quieter, narrower, and strangely empty. He expected to be led to another meeting room, but the servant turned a corner and vanished into a doorway. Ethan stepped inside and froze. The room was warm, lit by a soft golden glow from high windows. It wasn't a grand hall or a throne room. It looked more like a private chamber. There were racks along the walls, each holding pieces of armor, silver breastplates, curved shoulder guards, gauntlets, and helmets, all polished to a mirror shine. In the middle of the room stood a woman. She was tall and graceful, with pale skin faintly tinged with blue. Her hair, a deep silver, was bound back in intricate braids that glittered with tiny jewels. Her eyes, a sharp, almost luminous violet, locked onto him instantly. But what made Ethan's breath catch was what she wasn't wearing. She wore no armor, no ceremonial plates, no helmet, not even the light chainmail that most Thyrini nobles were never seen without. Instead, she wore a simple flowing robe of deep blue, tied at the waist with a silver cord. It looked soft, almost delicate compared to the heavy armor pieces surrounding her. Ethan didn't need a diplomatic handbook to know this was a private moment he had no right to see. The woman's eyes widened in shock. "You!" Her voice was sharp, melodic, and entirely unmasked by any helmet. Sorry," Ethan said quickly, raising his hand slightly to show he meant no harm. "Wrong room. Someone told me—" "No one told you to come here," she cut in, her voice cool now, but her posture stiff with surprise. She straightened, but she didn't reach for her armor. Instead, she studied him. "You are human?" "Yes," Ethan said slowly. "Ethan Cole, Alliance Security. I was with the envoy group." For a long moment, she just looked at him. He expected her to turn away or call for guards or demand he leave. Instead, her eyes narrowed slightly as if measuring him. "You do not avert your gaze," she said at last. Ethan frowned. "Should I?" "In my culture," she said, her tone precise, "seeing a royal unarmored is intimate, personal. It is a thing only family or chosen companions may witness. and yet you stand here meeting my eyes as if this is nothing." Ethan hesitated. "I wasn't trying to be disrespectful. Where I come from, armor's just gear. It doesn't make someone more or less themselves. It's the person underneath that matters." Her head tilted slightly, as if the idea was new to her. "Strange. Thyrene measure worth by what is displayed to the world. Armor is not just protection. It is proof of honor." "Well," Ethan said with a small shrug, "humans measure honor by actions, not decoration." Her gaze lingered on him, searching for something. Finally, she said, "I am Princess Lyra of the Thyrene. You should not be here." Ethan gave a small nod. "Then I'll go." But before he could turn, the sound of heavy boots echoed in the hallway. The door burst open and 2 armored guards stormed in, weapons at the ready. One of them stepped forward. "Princess, are you harmed?" "I am unharmed," Lyra said sharply, not taking her eyes off Ethan. The other guard glared at him. "This human trespassed—" "Leave us," Lyra interrupted. Both guards froze. "Your Highness," I said. "Leave us," she repeated, her voice like steel. Reluctantly, the guards backed out, though their helmets turned toward Ethan with clear suspicion. The door closed. Ethan raised an eyebrow. "That was unexpected." "You should be dragged out and punished," Lyra said plainly. "It would be the proper response." "I'm guessing you're not going to do that?" he asked. "Not yet." She stepped closer, her violet eyes steady. "I want to know why a human soldier is here at all, and why fate chose to bring you into this room." Ethan almost laughed. "Fate? I think it was just a wrong turn." Her lips curved slightly, though it wasn't quite a smile. "We will see." Outside, the sound of distant drums echoed through the palace, signaling the start of the diplomatic reception. But inside that warm, quiet chamber, something unplanned had already begun. A meeting neither the human nor the princess could have expected, one that might change the fragile trust between their peoples, and neither of them knew it yet.